2, 1. Hello everyone, Nick the DM here again for another Dungeons & Dragons video. Alright, I said I was going to do it, and here it is. In my List of All Demon Lords video, I mentioned that I would cover every Demon Lord with sufficient lore in its own video, and that is what I'm doing today. Starting with the Demon Lord Adimarchus. A little warning, this video will contain mild spoilers for the 3.5e adventure path, The Shackled City, so if you plan on playing that in the future, don't metagame. That's it. Otherwise, enjoy the video. Adimarchus, also known as the Demon Prince of Madness, is ruler of the 507th layer of the Abyss, Occipitus. Adimarchus was a fallen planetar, but the reason for his falling is unknown. Before becoming a demon lord in control of a layer of the Abyss, Adimarchus waged war against Mount Celestia with a horde of demon minions. This battle was brutal, and while the Celestials may have fended off the invading demons, the cost was great. The Celestials sundered a part of Mount Celestia that the demons were on and cast it down into the Abyss on the 507th layer. Adimarchus, the demon warlord and fallen planetar, took the cast-off part of Mount Celestia and incorporated it into the layer of Occipitus, where Adimarchus began to rule and became the demon lord of the plane with what has been described as nearly limitless power. Adimarchus's power grew with each passing year until about 50 years before the events of the Test of the Smoking Eye adventure, at which point he made a move against rival demon lord Grozd. In the midst of battle between the demon forces of the two rival demon lords, Adimarchus simply disappeared. Some say he was killed or captured by Grozd. Others say that he fled when defeat seemed likely. A few even believe that he began a celestial quest for redemption. When a demon lord is disposed, there is normally a violent and vicious power struggle between powerful demons, each seeking to control the now leaderless layer. After Adimarchus's disappearance, a number of demons did flood into Occipitus. However, rather than staying to rule the realm, the place became known as cursed, even to demon kind. Fiends who stayed began to suffer from magic maladies, misfortunes, madness, and an unusually high number of ambitious subordinates. This was said to be a cause of the celestial nature of the piece of the plane that was cast from Celestia that Adimarchus incorporated into Occipitus. Now, earlier I mentioned Adimarchus's disappearance, and while there may be many rumors about this, the truth is much more interesting. So, here it is. 50 years before the aforementioned Test of the Smoking Eye adventure, an Aasimar paladin with 6 fingers on each hand named Athix, or Athux, I'm not entirely sure, there is no pronunciation guide, I'll go with Athux, had embarked on a quest to redeem Adimarchus's soul. The Aasimar paladin cut a straight line through Occipitus to confront the demon prince in his own throne room. Adimarchus and Athux fought to the point of exhaustion until Adimarchus sundered the Aasimar's blade. However, while clutching the Aasimar paladin by the throat, Adimarchus saw something in his eyes that sparked his compassion. The demon prince couldn't find it within himself to kill the paladin, nor could he subject him to the torments of Occipitus. Athux remained Adimarchus's prisoner and stood at the demon lord's side while he plotted against rival demon lord Grozd. Adimarchus attempted to bring Athux over to the dark side, but his attempts were half-hearted at best. Athux slowly continued to fuel Adimarchus's rage against demon kind, and over time an unusual friendship began to form between Adimarchus and the paladin. However, during this time, Grozd uncovered the plot against him and simultaneously discovered the relationship between his rival and the Aasimar paladin. And doing what Grozd does best, he conspired with Adimarchus's traitorous minions to overthrow his rival. As the ensuing battle between the hordes of the rival demon lords took place, demons swayed by Grozd captured Athux with surprising ease and imprisoned the paladin within an asylum on Carceri. Adimarchus couldn't bear the loss of Athux, and the betrayal of the fiends in capturing the paladin had once again rekindled his hatred towards demon kind. Adimarchus abandoned his hordes and his realm, and in a good act, he fled to Carceri to rescue Athux and seek redemption. As his abandoned army was crushed by Groz's horde, Adimarchus arrived at the demonic asylum of Skullrot on Carceri, to find Athux overcome with dementia and prisoner to one of Groz's most powerful allies, a powerful lich fiend and priest of Grozd named Dark Miracle. Adimarchus was unable to wrest Athux from Dark Miracle's clutches, and traded his own freedom for the paladin's restored mind and safe return to Celestia. The lich fiend readily agreed. Now imprisoned, Adimarchus watched as Athux shook off his seeming lunacy, only to transform into a fiend with midnight black skin and 6 fingers on each hand. Athux had actually been misleading Adimarchus from the start, and was, in fact, a devoted son of Grozd. At that moment, Adimarchus realized his foolishness. Grozd had found and exploited a weakness of his rival, a long-buried desire for redemption Adimarchus assumed he'd lost long ago, and had exploited that weakness to dethrone his enemy. That very thought drove Adimarchus mad. For 50 years, Dark Miracle had tormented Adimarchus with the knowledge that his futile quest for redemption and his pathetic pursuit of love ultimately cost him his realm, his freedom, his mind, and everything else. Dark Miracle's words only fueled Adimarchus's madness. More black-hearted than ever, and with fractured thoughts, Adimarchus craves freedom, vengeance, power, and numerous other things that no demon should ever possess. Adimarchus's demonic insanity has granted him the power to plant fragments of his own consciousness into distant minds and twist them in major ways. Living creatures who have received a portion of Adimarchus's consciousness become strangely drawn to him. The most dangerous example of this are the Cage Rites, who, in the adventure path of the Shackled City, had failed to release the Demon Lord, causing his will and rage to bloom into something entirely new. Adimarchus separated into 2 distinct creatures, each with a burning fury to escape Skullrot at any cost. At some point before his imprisonment, Adimarchus had created a test built into the very layer of Occipitus itself, that anyone seeking to rule the layer would need to pass before taking control. This is the test of the Smoking Eye. I won't talk about it here too much because that's just spoiling the whole adventure, or part of the adventure path, and it's not vital to Adimarchus's lore. Just mentioning that it exists was appropriate for the lore. However, what is important is the end of the Shackled City adventure path, so spoilers, I guess. Since published adventures and their official planned endings are considered canon in their respective realms, the conclusion of the adventure is also considered canonical lore, though whether the Dungeon Master uses said conclusion is based on their own lore or what point in the timeline they are using for the Forgotten Realms or Planescape. Whether the PCs of the adventure let Adimarchus out of his imprisonment or not, he's already made steps to freeing himself either by his own power, using his deranged followers, or if Dark Miracle dies in the adventure, whichever warden taking his place until he returns could be persuaded to release Adimarchus. Either way, if you choose to use Adimarchus in your Forgotten Realms or Planescape campaign, canonically Adimarchus may be free. Adimarchus has 2 forms, as I mentioned earlier. An androgynous angel with pale purple skin, golden tattoo-like patterns that shift lyrically across his bare flesh, metallic gold wings as sharp as razors, and dead black eyes. In this form, he wears a golden breastplate and wields 2 weapons, a brilliant energy whip and a golden gauntlet fitted with sharp bird-like talons. His second form is a lithe humanoid with ash-black skin, opalescent white eyes, black fangs, and 4 shadowy tentacles protruding from his back, each one ending in a lamprey's maw. In this form, he wields a smoldering greatsword made of ash and cinders. In either form, Adimarchus's eyes burn with a smoking flame, even more so when he is enraged. In addition to the appearance of these forms, Adimarchus has different ability scores and skills to match these alternate forms, so of course I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Now, of course, these statistics were from 3.5e, so just keep that in mind. I won't go through every part of the stat block, because that'd be its own video, but I will just keep some of the interesting or unique portions to let you all know. The biggest thing to start with is that these forms are separate from one another, but within the same body, and Adimarchus can change between them as a free action. Damage taken in one of these forms does not carry over to the other, so while the demonic form may be heavily damaged, Adimarchus could switch to his angelic form, which has entirely different hit points, and may be unharmed in that form. Additionally, killing one of these forms does not kill the other, and if one form is slain, it can be reformed after 1d10 days. These forms have a number of differences, as I mentioned earlier, but before that, let me tell you some things that stay consistent no matter what form Adimarchus is in. Adimarchus is listed as a challenge rating 23 creature, but both forms, with each their own separate stat block, are listed as challenge rating 23. And considering they have separate hit points and abilities, it would seem Adimarchus counts as not one, but two CR23 creatures, even though only one can be active at any given time, which makes this so much scarier than an already imposing challenge rating 23 of a solo creature. Both forms can, once per day, summon 1d3 plus 1 Glabrizu or 1 Merilith. Next is his Lie in State ability. If both forms are slain, Adimarchus's body disappears after 24 rounds or 2 minutes and 24 seconds, and his body will reappear dead but intact on his home layer of Occipitus. Any gear or equipment he was wearing or carrying at the time of his death also transports with him, and any destroyed items are reformed. Interestingly, it specifies the time he died, not once he disappears. So, looting Adimarchus's dead body may not turn out how the players want if the items then disappear after a time. So if Adimarchus is wielding his sword while he dies and the players take it off of him, it seems based on the wording of the ability that it would disappear as his body does. Any spells that prevent planar transport will delay this effect until the spell's time elapses, at which point the body immediately disappears. After lying in state for 1d100 days on his home plane, both forms are restored to full life. The only way to truly slay Adimarchus is to kill both forms on Occipitus. Next, Adimarchus possesses Madness, and for this it's just a unique little thing. He uses his charisma for will saves instead of wisdom and is immune to confusion and insanity effects. Of course, will saves were exclusively for earlier editions, so it doesn't really matter for too much for 5th edition. However, this is an interesting lore thing to mention. And for those of you who still play 3.5e, as I am attempting to, it will be very interesting to know. And his final shared ability is Shroud Alignment. Any spells or spell-like abilities that use the quote good unquote descriptor treat Adimarchus as if his alignment was good. This also fools items. So I assume that this means magic items with alignment restrictions and spells that affect creatures based on alignment would treat Adimarchus as if he is good. Pretty self-explanatory, but then it, for 5th edition, if you're translating this, doesn't have too much of an effect except for magic items. For earlier editions, this will have more of an effect because more things are based on alignment. Now let's take a look at abilities specific to each form. Starting with Adimarchus's angelic form, in this form, Adimarchus possesses wings and an 100-foot fly speed. This form has a +2 breastplate of command, +3 anarchic clawed gauntlet, and a +1 brilliant energy whip. The first actual ability is Implosive Strike, and this is a doozy. 3 times per day and no more than once per round, Adimarchus can activate this before he makes an attack. On a hit, the target must make a Fortitude save. On a fail, the target collapses in on itself and is killed instantly. Okay, great start to the stats. The wings in this form are treated as offhand weapons, specifically +1 keen scythes, for offhand attacks while not wielding a two-handed weapon. Next, this form of Adimarchus has numerous spell-like abilities, which I will quickly list right now. Adimarchus in his angelic form has these spells. Always active is Mind Blank on self only. At will is Detect Good, Detect Magic, Detect Poison, Mirror Image, and Greater Teleport. 3 times per day, Adimarchus can cast Blindness, Deafness, Entropic Shield, Greater Command, Plane Shift, and Unholy Blight. Once per day, Adimarchus can cast Blasphemy, Flame Strike, Song of Discord, Word of Chaos, and Word of Chaos. And finally, the golden tattoos I mentioned earlier are very specifically a unique ability which negate extra damage from critical hits and sneak attacks. And that's just the angelic form. Moving on to the demonic form. This form does not possess wings and cannot fly. However, this form has a much higher strength score of 35 compared to the 27 and a higher armor class of 45 compared to 42. Remember, these are 3.5e stats, completely different if you've only played 5th edition. In this form, Adimarchus wields the Ashen Blade, a +5 greatsword with an additional effect of once per round having someone hit by the blade make a reflex save or taking 21d6 damage, half from fire and half listed as damage directly from divine power. So I'm not entirely sure what that means in relation to 3.5. Seems almost like radiant damage, but not entirely sure. And he can choose to do this after seeing if the attack hits. Next are his Enervating Bites. In his demonic form, Adimarchus has tentacles in place of wings. These tentacles can bite targets and inflict 1d4 negative levels, 2d4 if the attack is a crit, onto the target until they make a Constitution saving throw. And, of course, this is earlier editions, negative levels don't impact as much as you may think, but they are still pretty bad. Next, I'll quickly list the spell-like abilities that the demonic form uses. Really quickly, Adimarchus' demon form has active always, mind blank on self only, at will, detect good, detect magic, greater teleportation, and true seeing. 3 times per day, darkness, greater dispel magic, plane shift, and unholy blight, and once per day, horrid wilting, maze, and wall of force. And that is it for Adimarchus, a powerful demon lord and unique villain for a campaign. As I said earlier, I do plan on making these videos for each significant demon lord, so if you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like to show me that you want to see more like this. And maybe subscribe to show your support for the channel. I want to try and hit 500 subscribers before the end of 2022, but we'll see how it goes. Anyways, thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!